Welcome to before it's all about it.
Alright everyone, welcome to round 2 of the APU National Novice. My name is Sadiq. I will be a chair for this round. Yeah, this one. Yeah.
Should turn on.
Cool. Alright, thank you. Yeah. Did you know consent?
No, I didn't.
You're okay. Alright, cool. Everyone consented to live stream, right? Alright, cool. Without further ado, on the motion you all are aware of, I'll be timing. Please ensure your phone is silent.
So what is?
I'm not
What's
sure.
yours?
It's yours? Alright, cool. Is the bell loud enough? Loud enough? Alright, cool. Without further ado, I invite the Prime Minister.
When we live in a world where we lack empathy, we don't take pride in our culture, we don't have a strong basis of our identity, we think it's important to make literature a mandatory subject in high school, and high school specifically, right? I'll explain to you later why literature is so important and what the principal justification behind this is, and what the tangible outcomes are out of this, right? Our stance is very simple today, right? Simple policy. So we'll make it mandatory the way we make other subjects mandatory in high school. Sejarah, English, BM, subjects like this, right? So you have to at least have a minimum of D to pass to have a minimum of D in this subject to be able to pass and move on into tertiary education, right? Yeah. If you don't, then you have to retake. It's the same thing as like when we take Sejarah and the BM, right? So what's the problem with status quo, right? We think that there's a large gap of understanding between members of our community, right? We are people who still unfortunately lack a lot of empathy, right? This is why we don't understand, we still haven't been able to solve things like rape culture, like put ourselves in other people's shoes to be able to understand the problems that they're going through, right? Sit down, I just started. We're also a community that really lacks the understanding and the depth of our culture, right? Sure, we have a lot of we have civics and like certain subjects that teaches us about culture, but literature is something that I will explain later on. It gives a new and very unique perspective and a depth to culture, right, and understanding where we come from, right. When we don't have a strong sense in our identity, it leads to things like problems like brain drain, right? When we don't take pride in our nationality and we don't want to stay back and fight the good fight, right? We'd rather choose an easy option and just migrate somewhere else, right? We also have a very third world mindset because of this, right? We see that in the SEA Games, like because they lack empathy and perspective, right? Lots of problems arise when we have to compromise with other people, right? So what's the principal justification behind this, right? We think that the government already makes you take certain subjects, as I mentioned just now, right? So why do we take these certain subjects, right? We need it because the government understands that we need to make sure that high school students who will later become, who are members of our community and are the future of our generation, will need these basic skills, right, to become part of a functioning and a good functioning quality community, right? For example, right, they make us take English and Bahasa Melayu to make sure that we have basic communication skills, right, so that we can read and we can understand, right? And they also make us take, and then there's like Sejarah and American history, right, in America, where they make sure that you understand the history of your country, right, so that you don't repeat the same mistakes, right? And it also instills patriotism, right? These are values that you need to have, that our government understands that high school students need to have to carry out throughout their whole lives, right? To be able to be part of a cohesive community, right? Why we think it's necessary to cultivate, why we think it's necessary to have this in high school, right? And specifically high school. We think that literature is the only subject that's able to properly delve into our culture, right, and understanding our culture. For example, right, in English literature last year, we had a subject, there was a story called Sambal Without Anchovies, right, where we understand about our culture, and it is written by local authors, right, giving you a new perspective. Instead of understanding Shakespeare or whatnot, right, we'll give you a perspective and appreciation for your culture, right? When you have that kind of appreciation for your culture, because now you understand your culture, this is when you will have a strong sense of identity, right? And we think that literature is also something that gives you a in-depth perspective, right? So you can see it, you can analyze it from various different perspectives and various different angles, right? Because what literature is that they give you the story behind, right, what goes on in people's minds, right, the psyche of what people are going through when they face certain struggles, right? So what they're thinking of, how they feel, these are very necessary things for students to learn, to be able to empathize with people, right, and to be able to rationalize better than what we're doing right now, right? We think that right now we're lacking a lot of these things, and only when we make literature mandatory, only then can we have these things, right? We think these are skills that are very necessary to function in society, like I already explained, right? Which is why we think that it's totally justified that the government make it a mandatory subject, right? So what are the tangible outcomes that can come out of this, right? So I tell you that the tangible outcomes is that we have a development of culture, right? What I mean by this is when the whole generation understands and appreciates their culture, right? This is when they are more likely to invest in culture, right? In making their culture something that's like put on the world map, right? Where everyone knows that when you come to Malaysia, you have to try the nasi lemak. When you come to Malaysia, you have to do this, and these are the specific cultures that are unique to our countries, right? We think that when we have the development of culture, it can lead to many things, right? Tourism, things like that, which will also lead to the cohesive development of our nation, right? And further than that, we tell you that it's more important. More important than that is that the individual development, right? When they have a strong sense of identity, something that's intrinsic to themselves, right? When they feel that they are valuable towards their society and want to contribute back to their society because they're part of this community, right? We also think that when you have a strong appreciation of culture and perspective and empathy, right? This is when subjects like liberal arts will be taken more seriously, right? This is when parents will now are more willing to invest in when their child says that they want to study unconventional subjects, right? This is when they will be able to unconventional subjects like liberal arts, right? Because these things are taken more seriously and are paving new career paths for them, right? So parents are more likely to invest and no longer see unconventional subjects as a risk, something that's risky, right, and not worth investing in, right. So we tell you that all of these tangible outcomes can only happen when we make literature a mandatory subject in high school, right? When you have the sort of identity of your culture, the culture and the empathy and the rationalizing and the critical thinking skills that only culture can give you, right? To think in the shoes of someone else, to think from various angles. These are very necessary skills that we're lacking right now, but we need desperately, right? So if you want a community that is high functioning, that will be able to empathize with each other and will be able to have a strong appreciation of their culture and have a strong sense of identity, go with like opening government.
Alright, thank you, Speaker, for the speech, and to kick off opposition and invite leader of opposition.
In a world where employers mainly hire you based on your skills, we see that literature in today's world is not as effective as other subjects as we are going to explain in the long run. And we see that while we see that it can be considered important, it is not important enough as like other subjects such as like mathematics, geography, and history to merit inclusion as part of the mandatory subjects to be studied in high school. And firstly, a few rebuttals towards side opening government who explain sort of why studying literature can somehow lead you to like more empathy towards your community. But we see that more often than not, we see that many students in high school today are reluctant to study a subject such as literature. And while it is true, you might include texts from living authors, but we see that to have a broad curriculum, you need to include things such as Shakespeare and also foreign authors as well. And we see that many students will be very reluctant to study arcane language, Shakespeare's arcane language, and we see that, and this will definitely throw people off the subject. And while we concede that there will be some students who have a passion in English literature, but we on side opening opposition are not banning the subject entirely, but are making it optional. So students can have the opportunity to choose to take the subject as an elective if they so choose. And we see that this is important for everyone as it does not just free up space for other more important subjects such as ICT, which we see is quite lacking in today's world, and which is an important and up-and-coming subject that students need to excel in. Please sit down. But we can also satisfy some people. We can satisfy the passions of students who actually want to take literature, and they can also study in a smaller class, which is much better for them, as in this way they can learn. As in this way, they can learn more intensively and get a better score as well. And moving back and returning back to my point, in that many people do not like English literature. We see that it's better to have a subject. It is better to please sit down. We see that if people do not do well, if people do not feel a general interest in the subject, we see that it is not justified to continue teaching the subject in school, because we see that a subject reputation depends on how good people actually do with it. And if people keep getting like C's and D's in the subject and not many people get an A or A star, we see that therefore it is grounds. We see that it is grounds that this subject should be discontinued in favor of more important subjects, as I said, like ICT. I'll take one later. On to my next point is that how studying other subjects such as history can also bring about that sense of empathy, which can come about without studying English literature, which we see is already a subject close enough to English language, and we see that can be adapted into it. Yes.
Yeah, but if you're not okay with literature because employers won't use it and some students fail, well, then why are you okay with history because employers don't use that either and some students still fail in that too?
We see while both literature and history both develop skills in analysis, which we see is important in the workplace. We see that English literature is something that can be supplanted with history as a subject, as it more directly explores the crossroads between societies, and is more effective than simply exploring a certain author's point of view. We see that in history when we study like sources and identify their nature, origin, and purpose. We see that this is far more effective than studying like ambiguities in English literature, where you have to like guess and read between the lines and guess at the author's meaning. We see that a more concrete and viable option in this case is to study history. As Winston Churchill once said, history is the foundation for stagecraft, and a good foundation of history, and along with other core subjects such as mathematics and science, are more important to develop a student skill, and subjects such as literature do not meet the threshold to be able to be both interesting to the student and as effective enough to be studied in high school. We on side opposition are espousing a more practical standpoint compared to side government, where we actually weigh up the advantages and disadvantages of subjects, and we conclude that while literature can potentially be important, it is too close to subjects such as history in building empathy and a bond between the subjects and a bond between people. In that, and it is also too close to existing subjects such as language, and that we see that it is not a good enough, it is not a viable enough subject to be considered in the school curriculum and should be made optional, because we concede that there are still some people who want to study the subject, and we are not taking this opportunity away from them, and we see that, and so therefore in conclusion, we on side opening opposition are the only team. Are the only team where we can provide the best of both worlds, and not spending too much time and resources on a relatively worthless subject, and also giving select students the opportunity to pursue the subject if they so choose. And because of it, and with that, I am proud to oppose.
I thank the speaker for the speech, and to wrap up the opening government, I invite you to kindly
I can see myself.
Go for it.
You guys ready? Roses are red, violets are blue. I hate contradictions, and I think so do you. Couple things that came up from the outside the house I think wasn't really fair in today's debate, right? So firstly, I don't think it's fair for them to come up here and tell us that the metric they want to judge whether a subject should be used is one that employers are going to be used for, or one that's going to help an individual within the economic industry, but in the same breath tell us that they are completely okay with history and development in those areas. I think it's a principal concession. It's a principal concession that culture is something that's important for a community, right? That's why they're okay with history, and that's why they want history within the circumstances. The delineation that they want to draw here was that history is okay, and therefore literature is not necessary, because they equate the two to the same thing. And I think that's the exact problem that we have within our society today. But before I go into that and the lack of responses that come up in the Chisin's speech, I'm going to go into a couple of rebuttals that I don't really think fit into this debate. Firstly, this point about how some students are bad at it and therefore it's unfair, I think that it's the same on both sides of the house. Firstly, I think that the same thing can go with history or other language subjects. That's not the metric we use to judge whether or not a subject should be compulsory. We don't judge whether or not a student can do well. Maybe judge whether it's necessary for a student to even start doing it. And I think they need to accept that burden. And they already have the concession, right? Secondly, they told us something about it's being lack of interest, is that it's not interesting, therefore students won't want to go and pursue this subject. I don't think it's a fair burden too, because we still have history, we still have Malay, and so on and so forth. The other thing, they told us how this employers are metric in this debate. I don't think so, because we still allow students, we still force students to learn like Malay, even though they might want to go overseas later on. We still force them to learn English, even though they might want to study locally, because we recognize that these things are important for you to develop as a community and communicate within a community, something that wasn't really responded to when Chisin brought up. The other most interesting point is history, where they wanted to equate history and literature and tell us that it's the same thing. I don't think so. History is a study of our past and our roots. Culture and literature is a study of what our society has developed from in terms of social development, right? What does this mean? This means we're not going to appreciate what our historians have held for us in the past, but appreciate how our society thinks. And at what point in time do our society think in a particular way, right? What does this mean? This comes with appreciation of how P. Ramlee songs go and help people gain national unity, the pride of having singers or people to be able to develop your culture, your social development. These type of things are integral to society and completely distinct from history, and I think it's necessary in today's debate, right? So what am I going to do in today's speech? I'm going to talk predominantly about whatever Chisin talked about. Let's talk about a little bit extension of towards micro of how it helps individuals, right? Let's talk about it. But firstly, what's this debate about? Because I don't think they understand the burdens of this debate, right? This debate is for the impact of making literature a compulsory subject within high schools. Therefore, there's two burdens in today's debate. Firstly, we need to justify the making it a compulsory subject within high school, within to a community. Secondly, we need to justify it to the individual. If it benefits two parties, we take this debate, right? Our burden of proof is basically that, right? Our stance is simple, whether it's going to make it compulsory in these circumstances. Three levels of justification. Firstly, whether or not it's just for the state. I think it's just for the state to impose these subjects in the same way the states impose other subjects, right? What does this mean? A state imposes subjects at the point in which we recognize is beneficial to that community in order for that community to develop, and it's a necessary subject for that community, i.e. history, i.e. whatever we do with Malay and English and so on. So I parallel this to you. This is necessary for communal development. But we need culture, and we need the development of culture and literature in order for us to be able to communicate with other members of the community to develop these communal bonds, right? Therefore, if I go into a kampung in Kelantan, I might not have something to talk about within these areas. Or if I change work and end up working in Melaka or other areas, I'm so sorry, all right, I may not have something to talk about within these areas too. That's why we have development of history. So if I go to Melaka, I can learn about the A for Formosa. So I talk about the history that happens within these areas. I'm able to communicate with the people in these areas. I'm able to develop a communal bond, and that helps not only the community survive, but also the individual survive. Same thing I want to parallel to culture, right? So certain societies and certain areas require an understanding of culture and why this came for us to be able to A, talk to these communities, and B, tread lightly with these communities, right? So that we don't offend these communities and so that we develop. So I think that's the development that states have within the circumstances. But secondly, and more importantly, whether or not it's just for individuals, and that's when we talk about the principle of what high schools are for. High schools are for individual development and individual identity. That means we force you to learn moral within these circumstances because we recognize it's important for you to grow as an individual, even though it may not help you economically when we talk about businesses and so on. We recognize it's important for you to learn two languages because it's necessary for you to communicate, even though your community may be one that's predominantly English speaking or predominantly Malay speaking, because in the future you may need this develop. We force you to learn maths and so on because we recognize that you need maths as a basis. We force you to learn science because it's a discussion and you may not know what you want. What does this mean? This means students and parents don't really decide what subjects they want to have because they are unable to differentiate the short-term benefit, the long-term benefits. States decide whether or not it's beneficial for this circumstance. So I tell you at the point in which it's just for these individuals to do so, where you have self-development. What does this mean? And this is where Chisin's important arguments came in, right? We told you that culture is the ability for you to understand your past roots diverse from history. History is the understanding of technical past and technical past. Culture is the understanding of how these communities were thinking at that point in time and how we thought at that point in time and developed from there, right? So what does this mean? An individual is able to find their self-identity within a nationalistic approach within to a community. I'm not telling you that it's the main and only way for an individual to develop their self-identity. What I'm telling you is it's an important way for a community and a nation to be able to impose that upon its students, right? So we tell students, you are Malaysian. You need to stay within Malaysia. You need to learn how to develop or appreciate Malaysia. And this form of development and national unity is important for a student to be able to understand, so that if we were to go overseas or if we were to go to other circumstances, we understand our roots and where we came from. It's where how communities develop and stand the test of time, right? With the understanding of what these communities are in the long term. So what does this mean? And this means that we recognize that culture is something that's important for a community to be able to develop and last a long time, but it's also important for an individual to be able to develop his self-identity and self-worth when they go to other nations, right? So therefore, it's no longer Malaysia's absorbing this white culture and so on and so forth, and the dissolving of culture through this liberalization of values, but instead cultures that are willing to come in and stay in a long-term period of time, right? Therefore, we have Malaysian culture like P. that doesn't die out over the long period of time, but is constantly appreciated within the circumstances. For those to happen, we need long-term benefits. What else are we talking about in today's debate? And what is the tangible argumentations that we hear within our speeches in today's debate? I'm telling you that at the point in which an individual is able to develop, what does this mean? This means you're able to have a communal benefits. Therefore, this individual is able to have support structures to be able to help them at the point in which they're down and low, right? So, i.e., you're able to talk in community and develop like more friends and more people to be able to talk to within these areas. Individual self-development, because individuals are able to find themselves and find their identity within the nation. And I think it's important. It may not be necessary in all circumstances, but I think we still impose it upon students, even if it's not necessary, because we recognize it might be necessary in the future, and it's the best thing to impose upon students, right? So therefore, students be able to develop and find their self-identity. But more importantly, we talk about cultural development, right? We told you that at the point where individuals and the community of individuals understand the past history of their culture, we're able to develop a new culture in the future without absorbing yourself within that old culture. What does this mean? We no longer absorb white culture within our areas. We don't no longer absorb cultures that may not be relevant within circumstances. But what do? We have cultural development of what we are as Malaysian unities, and we're able to develop an identity. What does this mean? We're having a community, we have individual support, but more importantly, we're able to portray our community out to outside world. So what does this mean? We have people that are going to come in or being in love with Malaysian culture, and therefore we have people entering these circumstances, which is important for economical development. We have brain drain, whatever cheating we want to talk about. Look, this debate needs to be parallel on two levels. We are judged on two levels. Whether it's principally just for states to impose this on the individuals, principally just for high schools, and whether it brings the most amount of benefits to individuals and the community. For all those reasons, OG.
I thank the speaker for the speech, and to conclude the opening half of the debate, I invite them to the presentation.
Side-opening opposition has never denied the importance of culture in society, but rather what we have done is told you that when this culture comes to the expense of children, of preventing children, especially when these children are 16, 17-year-olds, because they're in high school, when you prevent these children from learning and more valuable things to their future, then we see that it is no longer as necessary. Because we see that what happens then is that there is no point in learning about your culture in the sense that what side-opening government is trying to tell you when you no longer have any money. And when you don't have the lack of money, then you will die. And along with that, your culture will die with you as well. And so we see that that's the problem with side governments face that need to face, is that when you have children only focusing on their so-called national unity and only focusing on their culture, we see what happens then is that they know that first of all, they're no longer able to catch up with the world. Because what happens then, if when you go overseas and you apply for a job in a law firm, and I say, oh, B. Ramlee, amazing actor. That will not get you anywhere in life. Because we see that what happens then is Malaysia starts falling behind with the rest of the world. They start falling behind, and Malaysia no longer becomes valuable to the world. Because what happens then is that the world deems Malaysia as less valuable, because Malaysia, the students studying in Malaysia only focus on the culture, which is what side-opening government is trying to push. However, if you follow under side-opening opposition's logic, which is us, we see that what happens then is when you learn subjects like history, rather than first of all, what happens then is, please sit down. First of all, what happens is you're able to first of all understand the culture, which we've never denied. But since I'm being focused on culture, because what happens then is when we learn about things. And we learn about history. History is mainly about facts, but you're able to judge and analyze. And what happens then is and the difference between history and literature is that literature is from one person's standpoint. And what side government needs to tell us is how learning about sambal without anchovies is going to help you land a role as a heart surgeon. How learning about sambal without anchovies is going to land you a role as a lawyer in the future. We see that is not important. And when they talk about literature mainly focuses on of things in the past, things such as Othello, things such as Macbeth, and they still have to tell us, and which is a point that they brought up, is how literature somehow was able to solve rape. I mean, then they need to tell us how learning about a Midsummer's Night Dream is going to help solve rape. A fairy tale about a little fairy and an earth goddess, something like that, and we don't understand how that's going to suddenly be able to solve rape. Please sit down, I'll take one later. Second of all, they mentioned how it leads to brain drain. But as I said just now, culture is important. But we are now living in an age that is constantly changing, and we need to be able to adapt to that, or else we'll fall behind. And what happens then is that once Malaysia falls behind these other more powerful countries, these other more prosperous countries, what happens then is Malaysia is no longer needed. Malaysia is no longer valuable, and when that happens, Malaysia is deemed less worthy. And what happens then is that Malaysian culture is then forgotten about. Because along with the country's importance being forgotten about, then along with it goes its culture. So we see that in order to keep that culture alive, which we very much value on our side, in order to keep it alive, then we need to look at the more practical solution, which is what we are proposing as our position. Yes.
The pool of medical students are already oversaturated already. These conventional jobs that you're talking about are already oversaturated, right? The reason why Asian countries lack career opportunities in the sectors of culture, theatre, arts is due to the lack of appreciation of culture, contrasting to Western liberal democracies where they do have the appreciation of culture and have those career options.
As I said, side-opening opposition never denied the importance of culture. And as I said, when we learn about history, when we learn about sejarah in school, we learn about Malaysian history. We also learn about foreign history. We learn about World War II. And we do things like that. However, when you have things like, when you learn about like local plays, and we see that that is not something that will benefit these children in the future as much as learning about something like World War II. That is something that children can develop on. Learning about, like, let's say, algebra is more useful than learning about sambal, wala, anchovies. And we see that that is obviously more important to the children's futures and important to the country in the future in order for the country to step up. And we see that what happens then is that when you have, and as my previous speaker mentioned, where you have jobs nowadays, like important roles of ICT, which have shown a massive lack of in the world, we see that once Malaysian students are able to fill the boots of these, are able to fill these roles, then Malaysia will be able to develop. Then Malaysia will be able to become more important in today's society. And before that, please sit down, we took one. And the Deputy Prime Minister came forward and told us that, oh, these children don't know what they want in the future. But please keep in mind that these children are 16, 17-year-olds. They have enough experience in life because they're in high school. They're high school students, they're not elementary students. And we see that once these students are already 16, 17-year-olds, they already know what they want for their future. They've already had years and years and years of experience of experiencing different subjects that they could take in the future. Then we see that another thing we have with government's case is that when it comes to IGCSEs, are you then going to take away the ability to choose what options you want to take, to choose what subjects you want to take? Because we see that when this student no longer feels that they don't need this subject in the future, they don't feel compassionate about it, sure, we allow them to get rid of it. But we only allowed these children to take this subject if they really feel passionate about it. So, until my substantive. So we see that when you have children in high school learning about literature, learning about subjects of the past, learning about plays of the 1300s, learning about poems of the 1500s. We see that when that happens, what happens then is that when you focus too much on it, we see that what happens is that you'll concentrate too much on the past. And what happens then is that Malaysia, as I mentioned before, starts falling behind in comparison to other countries. And especially when literature focuses on things of the past, they often enforce their values onto them. They enforce things like gender roles. They enforce things like racism. And according to side government, somehow enforcing these roles, somehow enforcing these things in literature will somehow be able to stop it. Somehow it will be able to open the parents' mindsets to liberal acts and liberal arts. And we see that that is not the case at all. Because we see that when you promote things like gender roles in schools, when it comes to things like literature, what happens then is that those liberal values are no longer valued. And because of that, please have a side conversation. Thank you.
I thank the speaker for the speech, and to kick off the closing half of the debate, I invite member of the
Ladies and gentlemen, more often than not, people who are involved in literature scenes all across the world are seen as people who are less successful than those who are in science stream, than those who are in businesses. However, on our side, we believe that this is very problematic. This is very problematic because literature is what makes us humans in the end, right, ladies and gentlemen? Now, it stems from literature, and we have to have that exposure, even from a very young age, even in high school, for us to develop our own capacity to develop our own self, right? But in reality, ladies and gentlemen, these people who are in literature are not looked at as people who are successful, but in reality, they are actually people who are well developed as a person and as human beings, and that is what is our end goal in today's debate, right? So, how is our case as a closing argument better than the opening opposition, right? So it's this that we acknowledge the fact that millennials nowadays aren't able or willing to sit down and read a tree, right? And for us, we believe that it is a prerequisite for a subject to be entering that age, which is training, and teacher must have well educated how they train is supposed to have better interest in you, right? So you will have classes that we learn, and teachers are also stakeholders in business, which is why so in our class, for literature to be a mandatory subject, it's already a prerequisite. Teachers have go through training and psychological classes in order to make their classes fun, and this is how it's different from the opening gap, right? So what did the opening gap actually tell you, right? So they throughout their whole speech, what I could get was how they prioritize culture as a means for them to have better communicative skills amongst different communities, right? So they talk about culture and how are we different, ladies and gentlemen? How are we different in that view? We say that learning about culture through into literature opens actually more doors for individuals to engage with other people, and they know how to behave themselves in different environments. And in the end, this is essential in order to not offend people in that culture, and we prioritize interactions among human beings. Now, so some rebuttals coming from side opening up, right? They say that I'm not doing anything now, later on, yeah? So they say that when you learn literature, you can no longer catch up with the real world. Now, we all know that the world is always changing. It's changing like very rapid in this pace, right? So if you say that you want students to learn from the rapid changes of the world, then what is the benchmark for that? On our case, ladies and gentlemen, we believe that literature is something that is solid, something that students are able to keep up with, students are able to read and to still be able to believe that in another 10 years, right? So how is learning about literature help you in the future? Like what the opening up asks us, right, in the government side. We are not saying that students must only learn literature in schools. This is just one of the mandatory subjects. A alongside other subjects like mathematics, like science. Even though you may hardly be interested in science, you must also learn literature in order for it to develop yourselves, right? So we believe that those subjects alongside literature are able to cater to students' needs, and you don't have to say that just because it's mandatory for students to learn literature, it means that you're already not successful, you already cannot keep up with the world. That is, for us, is very absurd, right? So what is the problem in this debate? What are the issues in this debate, right? Why should we make it mandatory? Number one, we believe that there is actually already a stereotype for literature students who are seen as incompetent, are seen as less intelligent than people, and we believe that we must overcome this as well, right? So why is it harmful, ladies and gentlemen? Something that we are different from them, from the opening gov in telling you why is it harmful that we do not make literature a mandatory subject, right? So now, there is a decline in the soft skills of students in high schools, right? And how do we believe that literature helps students with soft skills? Is number one, you are required to have a deeper understanding of content in the book, right? So when you have a deeper understanding, you gain knowledge on how you're supposed to act in certain situations, and you must actually digest all of this information in the book, which makes you which helps you become a better person, right? So that actually goes on to my first argument, which goes under the keyword of self-actualization, right? So number one, what is self-actualization? What is self-actualization? For us, self-actualization means you have the right to be better, to improve yourself and to be better. So how is this instilled to literature? Because in literature you learn about people, you learn about how they live their lives, and you know the characters are growing and expressing themselves. So this is crucially important, ladies and gentlemen, for young people who are growing, especially high school students, for them who are trying to improve themselves, and they will go, if this character can learn this, if this character can do this, then why can't I? And this actually adds to their self-actualization. For that, closing.
Culture provides a singular worldview to like certain students, right? So if a certain white student working in white literature, then isn't it going to like strengthen the stereotype of white supremacist culture?
Right. So what I said is culture is one of the ways for them to know how to react. It's not the only way, ladies and gentlemen. For us, we believe that culture is still important for them to learn and not be neglected, because it also helps them on how to react to any events that are happening. Because ladies and gentlemen, we do know our human behavior changes. We know how to take good and we know how to take bad, and we believe that students, high school students especially, are able to know how to react, right? So our number two argument, and your extension coming from side, which is actually something more important and more valuable in today's debate, is in the keyword of creativity, right? So how is our side better in developing creativity? So now, when you read something, you require imagination, right, ladies and gentlemen? So this is not developed when you learn about theories in science or when you learn about facts in sejarah. You do not develop your creativity, right? So creativity is not significantly developed in Oxford, but they do not have literature as a mandatory subject, as it is just a supplement subject, right? So how does this help individuals? How does creativity help individuals? It actually gives you more job opportunities. It makes you a better person than the next one next to you who does not have literature as a compulsory subject. Why, ladies and gentlemen? Because when you go for an interview with a company, right, they will always ask you, what do you think you should do better for this company? And this is derived from you having imagination, having that innovation to know what to do better for that particular company, right? So it is logical and realistic for us to assume that this is what employers are looking for, which is people with creativity and people who know what they're doing and people who know what their future looks like, ladies and gentlemen. And this, for us, it is developed from having literature as a mandatory subject. Now, well, how is this different from Oxford? In Oxford, they're saying they're prioritizing more of maths and science. But maths and science is a very universal subject, right? Wherever you go, people learn the same thing. You go here, algebra is the same as another country, right? So everywhere you go, you get similar and similar traits. This is why it's different from literature, and this is why we should prioritize it. And I have never been prouder to propose this, gentlemen. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Speaker, for the speech and previous items in the position. I invite you to
The reason why we have literature in school is in order for us to actually preserve that particular culture. The moment you make it compulsory, it's already made it bad in nature, right? So basically, I'm going to give the my structure is I'm going to differentiate the opening and closing of opposition from the beginning, and then moving the rebuttals towards the opening and closing side or government side, and moving to my extensions, right? So basically, what do we think that closing our opening opposition is different? Is because on the opening side are fighting for the idea of harms of students, and from the closing side is going to show you how hyper-nationalistic state will cause isolation more under the side of the house. And then going to show to you the development of globalization will never occur on the government side. So basically, let's move to the rebuttals first, right? The rebuttals came from the opening side, closing of the side for opening government. Is that you got to understand the differentiation between history and culture to begin with. History is facts, and we need basically. Facts is something that is transparent to begin with. Even if facts is strong to be under sort of course, is that you can have a fact check and whatnot. Culture on the other hand is that culture have informal and formal culture to begin with, and we need to focus on the surface level is even better rather than to understand the deep culture the deep culture, right? Because it's really great to begin with as a example at baby tossing. So the second battle towards why high school to begin with, right? You got to understand the more you instill this kind of culture towards high school, the hyper-nationalistic will occur more under the sort of house. Because after this, it's more likely they want to focus on their own culture to begin with. It's more likely for them to understand. So basically, I'm Indian, so it's more likely for me to actually fight for the rights of baby tossing. So after this, it's wrong for you and to actually ban baby tossing to begin with because it's my culture. So second analysis towards this battle is that more likely. So basically, it's more likely for the blacks culture to be bad under people's perspective, right? Because after this is that people going to perceive the white culture and the best culture, and the best culture such as the drag culture and whatnot is already bad in Asia. So it's more likely for people in the South Pole, it's more likely for them to strengthen the stigma on how the white culture is the best culture, or maybe the Chinese culture is the best culture to be compared maybe with the Indian culture or maybe the best culture to begin with. And then last about those is that you already have this kind of check balances in South School, right? Or how you already have your race background, you already have your religion background, even if in schools, right? Because that's an example. Even in schools right now, it's more likely for us to actually just give greetings to the teachers in order for us to show our respect. It's our own culture right? On how we still going to respect the teachers and whatnot. So basically, for closing up this side, what's the best way for us to actually instill culture towards the children nowadays? Is that we think that so basically we think we think for the close up side is understanding the surface level of your culture is already enough to begin with. Because you understand, the more you understand the deep part of the culture, it's really bad to begin with. As an example, I'll show to you how baby tossing and whatnot. Moving to the rebuttals towards the closing side, right? Or how they say about self-actualization and creativity. You got to understand self-actualization and creativity is really subjective to begin with. As a student, I think maybe science is a point of which I can self-actualize. Maybe I think that mathematics is the only way for me to be creative to begin with. So basically, the arguments brought by the closing on side already fall down. And secondly, we think the only thing for us to cater to this kind of problem is South School, because already made this kind of thing optional to begin with in South School. How we want to allow you, if you think that literature is the best way for you to self-actualize, so then you can take literature to begin with. That's the point of view which we think that actually is making it optional is even better. Yes.
Yeah, firstly, it makes you sound like all cultures in Malaysia are racist, and as an Indian, I'm kind of offended by that. But secondly, if cultures are innately racist, then what are you doing to solve it when people actually want to go deeper into culture?
So basically, that's a problem, right? The moment you understand the deep part of the culture. Okay, so basically, I want to cater to the problem in my third analysis on how expressions. Right? Let's move to my my extension. The first, I have three level extensions in my argument, right? First, about four expressions. You got to understand that yes, you got to understand the nature of literature. It's where you can express your expression in literature and whatnot. You got to understand the idea of subjectivity, or how different people have different form of expression to begin with. So thus, we think the moment the form of coercion made by the government itself made our aim to make sure people understand culture or express their expression based on literature is going to be harmful to begin with. Denied. Moving to the second extension, right? Regarding about the minorities. Just so basically, this extension lie on the POS given from my opposition view just now. So basically, you got to understand basically, in the school, it's more likely for them to actually popular literature to begin with. As an example, for English language, it's more likely for my school to take William Shakespeare literature to be teach in the students to begin with. So basically, we think the particular school is more likely for them to actually didn't be appreciated to begin with, right? As an example, maybe so as an example, if I'm African American in my particular school, the moment I live in a majority school where majority of them are whites, it's more likely for me to actually it's more likely for my culture to be appreciated. It's because of my school going to take the popular literature to begin with. So we think that actually the idea of you to make sure the preservation of culture will never also under your side of the house. Moving on to my last session before the closing.
Alright, so how are you going to make sure that whatever events that is happening in the world, like say white supremacists, right, exists as a culture in the future? Because culture needs a long span of time to become one, and how do you know, keep it to that?
Well, that's a problem, right? The reason why there are white supremacist issues is because of the hyper-nationalistic. Why the hyper-nationalistic occur is because of your side of the house making it compulsory for you to understand your own one culture. Because something is, it's more likely for students to be one-sided in your own culture, right? So basically, let's move to my last extension. How it's more likely for bigots to actually go against under their own culture. As an example, even I'm a Malay, it doesn't mean I'm going to be okay with my own Malay culture to begin with, right? So basically, after this, the moment you make it compulsory in particular school, it's more likely for me to actually go against studies, I'll go against my own culture because I didn't have the same understanding with my own culture, right? So basically, it's going to be harmful ideas of the house because your end goal to make sure people going to appreciate the culture even more is going to be really bad after this, right? So they just don't your end goal, we're not going to be achievable ideas of the house. So basically, the outcomes from the closure of the shade is that the heat will be spread more on the side of the house to be compared with the closure of the shade idea where we think make it optional and go with Sasko is already good, but we have those kind of check and balances to begin with, right? So to sum up the case for closure of the site, we think the Sasko is better. It's no good for you to make it compulsory to begin with.
Thanks, Peter, for the speech. And to wrap up both sides of the debate, I invite Rosie.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for the speaker for giving for this. So as Moshe said, we are emphasizing teacher to all students, to high school students. So from the opposition, they continue to claim that how education is not important towards the student, high school student, and then they say we should focus more on other subjects except for teacher like mathematics, science. But we, the government, are emphasizing and saying that literature is needed in literature is still needed on high school students. So some of the things we like to emphasize that the opposing governments also claim that about how literature is important for communication. But we, the opposing government, also want to emphasize more emphasize on the fact that if you look back the motion, the one who we target are not at one, but the high school student. It's because the biggest stakeholder, the biggest one we are focusing based on the motion is the high school student itself. So in the end, we are not everyone should remove not all the university, not the junior school should prioritize on the teacher. But about we are asking the high school student who are now reaching the mature age to learn to focus more on their literature. So yes.
Is it important for high school students to focus on subjects that are more relevant to the current day and age?
Day and age as in?
As the current
issue.
Is it important for high school students to focus on subjects that are more relevant to their life?
But the thing is, literature itself is related to the life. Most importantly, their own culture. So can you imagine if as they say, they should focus more on their life, but as I said, literature itself is more also focused on their culture. For example, you can imagine if the person assimilate, they switch from one culture and language to the other. For example, in the Malays itself, not Malays in Malaysia, but Malays in other parts of the country, especially in South Africa, the Cape Town. Yes, there is Malays ISIS in Cape Town, almost 100,000 population. So according to the recent study, the Malays in Cape Town are losing their culture and language. They are now most majority of them are now speaking South African or African than the Malay staff. And the most majority of the Malays language in South Africa speaking by the Malays or the Cape Malay are only majority are old people or old people are adults instead of the younger people which take the main language in South Africa, right, Afrikaans or whatnot. So right now the government, one of our argument we are not one of the argument we are trying to protect. We are trying to protect is that we are trying to avoid our culture to disappear, to extinct from this world. Like for example, during the communist era in Bulgaria, like do you know that not only the Bulgarians living in Bulgarians living in Bulgaria, but also the Turks living in Bulgaria. During that time, they amount like 20% of the population. During that time, during the 1980s, the communists are trying to force the Turks to assimilate to their culture. So some of the measures they try to do includes forcing the Turks to change their name, their culture, their language, their culture, their style of manners, even their religion. Because most of them are Muslim, and they are trying to force them to change. But the Turks will not back down without fight, and they even try to push back and try to keep the culture. So, but luckily in the end, even after the communist era, the Turks managed to keep the culture. The Turks managed to keep their name, their culture, their language, and also their religion. So when they say that when the one rebuttal that I just realized that by the deputy opposition was that how. Sorry. Sorry about this. Okay. How literature has nothing to do with history. Have you heard of space history? If we don't learn history, sorry if I butchered the statement, but if we don't learn history will repeat itself. Like as you claim, like if we learn more literature about our own culture, we will more supremacists. But what about the fact that if when we learn more about our own culture, we will be able to appreciate more, and also now we are meeting to our own literature, our own culture, and our own language. Like also we are using this motion, we are emphasizing that we should emphasizing the high school students to expand their literature, not limiting their own language and culture, but also to other language culture. Like when the Malays can learn, for example, the Malay not only learning the Malay language or English, but they can also learn Chinese like Hokkien, Cantonese, or whatnot. So obviously I keep trying to emphasize that the subject other than language are more important than the subject on that non-subject non-literature are more important than literature itself. But we are not saying, the government are not saying that literature we are not saying that literature should be more important than the non-literature subject. We are trying to emphasize that we are trying to emphasize that students, the high school students, should not forget the culture and everything. So that's why. We, the government, probably and unanimously support this motion in which we are emphasizing that all high school students all high school students should be prioritized with the literature itself. Thank you.
I thank the speaker for the speech, and to wrap up the debate, I invite the opposition of the
It seems that the entire government bench did understand
that just by teaching literature, somehow you can change the entire mindsets of people. Because we think that still bigots still exist.
Yes,
people like who have stereotypical mindsets to the cultures still exist anyway. Doesn't mean just by them teaching culture will just change those values anyway, right? Because we think that already these people who want to like have communal bonds already there's some incentive to actually like want to integrate with these kinds of communities, not the bigots, because these bigots will still want to pick stereotype and will still want to find weaknesses of these cultures. And I'm going to show you on why in my speech it will make that more harmful. So in my speech I'm doing two things. First issue is on empathy, on communal bonds, something that OG wants to talk about a lot, and secondly on self-actualization and creativity, which happen in CG, right? So let's move on to the first main thing, empathy, right? So like let's take that worst case first. Or like how it's not realistic to just teach how if you just teach literature, somehow like everyone will change their mindset. Because sit down, because still think that is it because of empathy? Is it because like you don't learn literature in the first place? Because you still have certain stereotypes to a certain culture, right? You still think that this culture is bad, for example. Sit down. So you still think that learning cultures wouldn't change the thing for these kind of bigots anyway, because they'll still think that Chinese people, they'll still think that people like me have a certain bad culture to begin with, and it's further integrated, it's further strengthened if you teach them these kind of cultures, right? Or at the very least, right, these people will be desensitized because these people think that literature isn't important enough because they think that literature is boring and they won't take into account the values that your culture tries to bring anyway. But in your best case, where these students were to learn all these values anyway, right? You'll see that firstly, that literature already projects a certain value. You must understand that literature already only projects certain cultures, right? Sit down, if a white poet or Malay poet will only talk about white culture only, will only talk about Malay culture only. It's very rare to find like a poet talking about all these cultures. Even if it does happen, right? We think that the most popular cultures stem from like white cultures, right? William Shakespeare is a white person. Have you ever heard of like a black poet being famous in the first place, right? We never heard about people from that kinds of spectrums, right? Sit down. But even if you can learn every culture, and you can learn that people, like if people were to like learn like a lot of culture, like Malay culture, Chinese culture, Indian culture, they'll still think that, or like I said to you before, these are the people who already have incentive to like commune with these kind of people anyway. The people who are learning these cultures, who are taking values of these cultures, already have incentive in themselves to find communal bonds with these kind of people anyway. The people who are bigots will only use these kind of cultures. Like, sit down. Because they think they will only find the offensive parts of these kinds of cultures, right? They'll think that only through literature they can shame a lot of people. Through literature they can use a lot of these. They can use it as jokes. There's a lot of things that may hurt their culture. We think is bad for these bigots. Before we went to like the comparison, sure.
Firstly, self-development was our point, not theirs. Secondly, your problem with racism and everything seems to be problems with your study of culture in itself. At the point in which you have good syllabus and good teachers and good regulations, would you then be okay with this?
Okay, so the problem with literature, like I said to you before, right, is that it's like your freedom of expression. So it means that the only thing that comes out is your words and how you view certain things, right? Even if that like your culture were to show that it has a certain value, for example, like you can have communal bonds, things like that. But the people still think that like these cultures, like these literature still projects these kinds of work. Like at the very end, like these cultures will still project these kinds of worldviews to begin with, right? So let's move on to the outside. What I remember trying to say, when I tried to prove to you, was how culture is already reinforced in status quo already. Like they talked about the example of P. Ramlee and like Bangkit with summer songs can make you commune together, right? And I think that's already good, and we don't need literature to back that up more, right? We think that already, if you already can have a lot of media, a lot of things that can support your culture, they can help you reinforce communal bonds. We don't think we need a lot of like literature to just make your perception, your dominate your view on culture, view on like others' culture even worse, right? So we think that right now, sit down. We think that culture can now, at the very least, on the outside, can be spread on an equal level. Because right now, like in schools, you won't like only spread like only like certain kind of like majority view on these kind of cultures. But like right now, like people can actually commune and like not actually commune actually can come together, for them to reintegrate cultures, exchange cultures, things like that. Sit down. But actually on your side, I remember trying to stay on how hyper-nationalistic people will reinforce, right? People will be more hyper-nationalistic because the point in which you portray white culture to something that's good. You portray white literature something that's good, and a white person, a white student tries to learn that kind of white want to learn William Shakespeare, right? You think that, William Shakespeare made poet, he was a very good poet. We think that that's why white people should be great. White people are the poets of the entire world, right? We think that's the thing that people try to forget. Sit down. No, I'm not going to take anymore. Secondly, we think that on the as well, it's only going to shout minority cultures, right? Because we think that the popular, like I said before, popular literatures tend to not aren't like that. Minority cultures aren't that popular, aren't that suitable for schools to begin with, and that's it's not going to be passed down to students, right? Students will still learn these kinds of literature that comes from majority. No, I'm not taking anymore. So a trade-off, right? So we think that on their side, when they talk about all the harms of brain drain, all the harms of even if they can prove on some point that they can have more communal bonds, we would trade off that for the sake of we don't have more or less hyper-national people, and we have have more minority, we have less minority cultures being shrouded by these kinds of literatures themselves. So let's tend to trust the government, right? So we think they talk about self-actualization and also creativity. We think that already, how I remember I stated how basically we can find creativity to a lot of other subjects. We can have there's a lot of other subjects came back at the back of the science table, we have the thing they have to make a certain kind of science model, things like that, right? We think there's also a form of creativity as well. And also self-actualization, it means you can choose whatever you want. And even if your student would think that literature is something that's self-actualizing, for him, they can choose to opt in to that subject. We don't think on how CG is how I'll say that, if you can somehow make literature compulsory, you can just make everyone have self-actualization. With this CG takes the debate. CO takes the debate.
I thank every speaker for the speech. I encourage you guys to cross your hands and wait outside.